Before we start the video, I wanted to quickly talk about my next official video. For those of you who haven't seen my community post, I'm working on a big project that will take some time to finish. If you enjoyed my Bowser's Brother video, you're probably gonna enjoy this one as well. Similar to our first replay episode, this video covers multiple games, upwards of 14 if I counted correctly. In the meantime, I'll be making Ginge talks as fillers so you guys have something to watch, and I'll provide updates on the progress of my video so you don't feel like I'm ghosting you. I have all the equipment I need, I just have to recapture all the footage and write the script. Alright, on with the video.
You know me, the fighting freak Knuckles, and we're at Pumpkin Hill. You ready?
This first story I believe happened in 4th grade and involves the character Knuckles from Sonic the Hedgehog. Knuckles is an echidna, which is a real animal that I'm almost 100% sure didn't exist until Sega created Knuckles. Now the word echidna is hard to spell, and even harder to pronounce, especially for a 4th grader. When I first saw this word in the Sonic Advance instruction manual, I took one look at it and said, screw it. When I was younger, I used to be obscenely arrogant and bigoted, as most kids are. If I didn't know something, it didn't exist or it wasn't true. I thought that Knuckles was some fictional animal that Sega made up, so naturally I couldn't ask my parents how to pronounce the word, and Michael didn't know either. So the only person I could ask at the time was the only other gamer I knew, my friend Chris. Unfortunately, he didn't know either, so I gave up and forgot about the word for a couple years until I got Sonic Adventure 2 Battle. In the story mode of SA2B, you swap between multiple characters as you play through the various levels. If you don't finish the story in one sitting and pick it back up later, the character you're playing as will reintroduce themselves and give you a brief recap, and that's when I heard it for the first time. I'm Knuckles the Echidna. I was so excited that I finally figured it out, that naturally I had to tell Chris at school the next day. And the conversation went something like this. I finally figured out what Knuckles is. He says it in the recap of Sonic Adventure 2 Battle. Yeah, I figured it out too. He's an echidna. No, an echidna is a part of the body. It's pronounced echidna. No, he says echidna. I heard it last night. No, he says echidna. You know what? Why don't we just ask Mrs. R? Because an echidna isn't a real animal? Yes it is. Really? Huh. Okay, fine, let's ask. So, when Mrs. R finally came around to our desks, we asked our question. Mrs. R, is the animal called an echidna or an echidna? To which she answers, you're both wrong. It's called an echidna. And as she walked away, I yelled, actually, we were both half right. I just ruined my credibility as a game reviewer. This next story happened, wow, not long after I got my GameCube. Do you guys remember back in the day when game stores had those kiosks that let you play demos of popular upcoming games? Man, those were the days when gaming was at its best. Anyway, when I was 9, Dad took my younger brother Nathaniel and I to GameStop just to look around while Mom did all the shopping. While there, GameStop had a Donkey Kong Jungle Beat kiosk set up with the bongo controllers. I played through the first level, and Nathaniel fought the boss. The game was so much fun, I asked Dad if he would buy it for me. But he said the game made too much noise and it would drive Mom and him crazy, so I couldn't get it. Fast forward a few years ago to 2019. While I was visiting friends in New York, I found a copy of Donkey Konga complete in box with the Donkey Bongo controllers at a retro game store. I bought Jungle Beat off of Amazon a few weeks later and rubbed it in my dad's face. I reminded him of our trip to GameStop and he got a kick out of it. This last story happened when I was 7. Michael and I were casually shopping at Kmart with Mom and Dad. Whenever we shopped with our parents, they'd let us look through the game aisle before we left, if we behaved. A pretty good incentive. While there, we found copies of Super Mario Bros. 2 and Super Mario World for the Game Boy Advance. We asked if we could get them, and our parents surprisingly said yes. Let's be honest guys, when you're a kid and you find something you want, your parents usually wouldn't buy it for you unless it was a birthday or Christmas present. So on the rare occasion when they allow you to buy something on a common shopping trip, it's a real treat, especially when it's something like a video game instead of a cheap toy. I know that most gamers like to open their new games in the car and look at the instruction manuals and occasional other goodies on the ride home, but I think in this case, the games were in the back of the car with the rest of the groceries, so we had to wait until we got home and help put the groceries away before we could have our new games. When Dad finally handed them to us, we immediately ran upstairs to our room and ripped those cases open. I should also mention that Super Mario Bros. 2 was Michael's and Super Mario World was mine. The first thing I pulled out of the box was the game and laid it on the floor beside me while I dug through the rest of the box. I loved looking through the instruction manuals before diving into my new games. After I pulled out the manual, I laid it down next to where I had put my game, only to find that it had disappeared. It was no longer where I had left it, so Michael and I started looking around, but neither of us could find it. At this point I started crying, and rightfully so. I lost my new game immediately after I bought it. If you watched my first Tales of a Gamer video, you probably already know what happened to it, but I didn't see him take it, and I was adamant that he didn't have time to swipe it and put it in his pocket in the short time it took me to turn around. So eventually, Mom and Dad come upstairs because they hear the crying, wanting to know what's going on. I told them that I lost my game, and without hesitation, Dad said, "Michael, give it back." Michael obviously denied taking it, and I even defended him, saying that I've been keeping an eye on him, there's no way he took it. Of course I was wrong, but like I said, I was an arrogant overthinker. Mom and Dad were not leaving the room until I found my game, which put Michael in a bad spot. Since I was easy to lie to, his plan was to hide my game until the commotion died down, and a few days later try to convince me that his friend gave him a copy or something like that if I ever caught him playing it, so I would think the game was his. Michael stole stuff from us all the time, but he would never get away with it because he was so bad at lying. He could fool me and our other siblings, but he couldn't fool Mom and Dad. And every time he got caught stealing, he would have to give back what he stole, and we also got to take something of his. If Mom and Dad found out that Michael stole my new game, he was going to have to return it and give me his new game as well. With this fear in his mind, when no one was looking, Michael slipped the game out of his pocket and said he found it under the bunk beds. To which I replied, "I wonder how it got there." Then Dad looked over at Michael with that USOB face and said, "Yeah, I wonder how it got there, Michael." Ultimately, Michael didn't get in trouble since my parents couldn't prove that he actually took it. It would have been nice to have gotten 2 games that day, but at least I got my game back. But that's not where this story ends. We have a 2-for-1 special in this particular case. You see, Super Mario World also comes with a cool poster. On the front is the entire map of Dinosaur Island, and on the back is the official artwork of all the enemies. That poster was missing from my copy of the game. Michael stole that too, but because of the drama that went with him taking my game, I didn't unfold the poster and never knew it existed until several years later. Michael was cleaning his room and found the poster he stole from me, along with a few other things. What a jerk. I asked him where he got it, and he told me that it came with Super Mario Bros. 2. At this point, I was a little older and not as naive as I used to be. Why would a poster of Super Mario World come with Super Mario Bros. 2 instead of Super Mario World? I threatened to tell Mom, and he gave it back to me. Chris's mom babysat us a couple days later, and brought Chris and his younger brother along, who I believe was 5 at the time. Anyway, I wanted to show Chris my cool poster, and brought it to the living room. After I showed him, I let his brother look at it too, and left him to his own devices. A few minutes later, I went back to look for him, ready to put my poster away, and he had torn it to shreds. I lost a valuable piece of gaming history that day. It sucked! But that's it for this video. Thank you all so much for watching, and keep on gaming.